All right, everyone. So my name is John Leader. I'm the creator of Vuetify. And today I kind of want to talk to everyone a little bit about the progress we've made since the version 3.0 release and some of the fun new things that are coming later this year. So if I could get a hand real quick, if you've used Vuetify 3, can you just raise your hand? All right, cool. That's good. Well, the rest of you, I'm going to see if I can get you on board. So with the latest release of Vuetify 3, which happened, or version 3, which happened in October 31st of last year, we introduced a set of new key features that really kind of expanded the functionality of the framework to make it more usable for users. One of those things was global application defaults, giving you the ability to customize your application from the root of the project, modifying every single component in the framework. We've added a brand new theme system and an upgraded animation system for better transitions and more options available for customizing your colors and your different brand settings for your application. We have a rebuilt layout system, which if you've used Vuetify 2 in the past, we were kind of, we could only do one layout. There was no nested capability. So we've rewritten the whole system so you can have as many applications layouts nested as you want. We added a few new components, which we do have some that we're still porting from version 2, but we do have a couple new components to talk about. We have some new APIs for how you can interact with the framework and the components in the framework. Again, just trying to expand on the semantic interface that we've used in the past. We've improved some of our developer experience features along with the release of Vue 3.3. If you got into that, there was a lot of new features for users. And now we have those not only integrated, but also available for us as the developers of the framework. And then one of the last new features that we have is we've started to move away from CodePen as kind of our place to display examples. And we have a new Vuetify Playground, which uses the Vue REPL repository. And so yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so a little bit about global defaults. So one of the things that was difficult in Vuetify 2 was every single component, unless you built your own template with a wrapper, you would have to define its properties in the template. Now, when you're a single developer or two developers, this is kind of okay, but over time with a large team, it begins to break down. So one of the things that we focused on for the version 3 was to make it easy for users to brand their application, to customize their application, and really make it easy for the templates to be constructed by developers without having to worry about so many different alterations. It's all defined on the project. So we wanted to provide a simple interface for configuring the prop, and we wanted to be able to allow the users to configure everything at the root. But we also wanted to provide new ways to configure for users in regards to, if you've used previous versions, we used a lot of Boolean props, and this was very great early on semantically. But as time went on and we added more features, it came to a point to where we would have 6 Boolean props that are exclusive to one particular feature and functionality. So one of the things that we've done, and you can see on the screenshot right here, is we have a density setting. So in version 2, it was dense. In version 3, it's density, and you have multiple different options available. But as we started to put these props and kind of merge them together, we realized that there's just a lot of configuration that users would need to do. All right, so one of the other advanced things that you can do in the configuration is not only can you assign component-specific defaults, but you can also assign global defaults. And these are going to make it really easy to theme and brand your application, along with aliasing, which I'll talk about on the next slide. But again, the theme is that we want to make it easy. We want to make it as easy to get into, as easy to modify, and get exactly what you're looking at of the framework to get your project complete. And in the end, it's kind of trying to provide this unified experience of you can configure at the core of the framework, but then you also still have to make changes in line for those use case scenarios that come up. Now, one of the coolest things for version 3 for me is we have dynamic defaults based upon the context. So to kind of give you an example, in this picture right here, I used the default configuration of Vuetify, no options, and I put together a little example. And then I applied specific defaults just to that card to kind of illustrate how you can make a few modifications in the config and completely change the way that a component looks and feels. And this is also based upon where it's at in the chain. So if you think about CSS like cascading, it works kind of the same. And another good thing about it is because since it allows for nested defaults, you can assign so many different parameters that dictate what a component looks like and the functionality that it has when it's in the context of another component. And it just allows you to get more granular control over what you're doing. Not always necessary, but it's a nice feature to have when you have like a design system you're trying to implement. And then aliasing. So this is my favorite part of version 3. So one of the things that I didn't like in version 2 was, let's say I have an application with 3 or 4 different types of buttons, and every single button I had to create a new component for. And maybe it's only using a few properties, but I still had to create that component. So in Vuetify 3, you can create what we call virtual components or alias components. And what you're able to do is you can import directly from Vuetify, and you can, in a sense, extend these or pool components, still have the proper developer experience and IntelliSense. Everything works just as it was a regular V button, but instead now you can name it whatever you want: card button, dialog button. And this is the part that makes it most easy to white label, because you can take everything in Vuetify, you can package it up, change its name, and ship it out. And you can define specific defaults that only apply to your customized components, therefore being able to create something we call blueprints without users actually affecting the core state and design style of Vuetify. So it just pops in and it pops out. All right, so for themes and animations, we spent a little bit of time going through and adding some more functionality to the theme system from version 2. It was very good, but it did have its limitations. One of those being we only had 2 available themes, light and dark. So for version 3, what we did is we expanded that to where dark is a subset of a theme, and you can have as many themes as you want. And in these themes, we've added new variables and configuration settings, such as being able to define the actual background and surface of components, the different variations of colors you can now define manually. So if you have a baseline theme that you would like to generate some additional colors for, you can easily do that. And then you can modify inline CSS variables that control different various settings throughout the framework. I'm not going to get too complex into it, but the bottom line is that the theme system is absolutely massive, covering everything in the framework with new abilities to customize it and make its appearance look different. All right, and one of the other things that we worked on was animations. Now, this is actually, the creator of this particular feature is Kale. He's one of our lead developers, and we really liked the idea of material designs and, dialogues transitioning from the activator point. Feels like it gives it a nice touch. And so we rewrote the animation system to support this, also support the regular functionality that existed in version 2. And then we added the ability where you can also, if you choose to, customize and redefine the strategies we use to show the animation. So we have multiple components that will use maybe a regular animation. For example, like the dialog activator is location-based, but bottom sheets comes from the bottom of the screen. So it's a little bit different, but we have the flexibility to do that. So yeah, we wrote the animation system, activator-based, and the transitions are smoother. Actually, if you have a slow device, we can pick up on that, and we can actually manually throttle the animation a little bit just to provide a better user experience. So I talked about this at the beginning. So layout system version 2 was it only had one level. You couldn't have anything nested, and it was a pain in the butt otherwise. So for version 3, we rewrote the layout system utilizing provide and inject, which did exist in version 2, but is much more prominently pushed now in version 3 of Vue. And we added this, the V layout item. And in a sense, what it does is it allows you to hook into the new layout functionality that we have with any component that you want. So it doesn't have to be just an application bar or a navigation drawer or whatever we say is a layout component. You can put anything there, and everything lines up and just works right out of the box. And so say you have a custom navigation drawer you want to use that's different from ours. You can easily just wrap it in a layout item and register it with the layout, and it'll put it exactly where it's supposed to go. A couple smaller notes. So we had some updates to our iconography and localizations. We've updated the icons to be able to easily support multiple sets. So there are some projects where you might have 2 or sometimes 3 icon sets that you have to work through for whatever reason, or like you run the docs. But we wanted to make it easy for users to not only assign a baseline, but also utilize other component fonts if they want, or icon fonts if they wanted to. So we have this, you can see in the bottom picture, we have this kind of prefixed MDI. So what we're able to do, okay, I want to use a default, but you also want to have some of these other icons available. So now in your templates, you can just prefix that icon set that you registered and then access all the components that are available. All the component types have been rewritten for icons. So now there's full ligature support, SVG components specific, and a lot of other options. I think we're putting like an emoji one in. That is just basically it's, whereas version 2, it was just one kind of monolithic component. We've broken it out to be, more expandable and easier. And then for localization, so we still support, I think it's actually like 40 something languages now. And but one of the biggest things that we made changes with in version 3 is that, okay, so now RTL is built right into the language. So if you work with the needing to change over to different orientations of text, it's based, you can do it in line if you want to, but you can also just assign the locale, and if it's RTL default, it'll automatically take care of that for you. So it's just like one less thing that you have to deal with. And then we also have, we have a couple of these in Vuetify 3. This one's called the locale provider. And essentially all of the systems provide in version 3, we also try to provide an inline component that allows you to overwrite that. So for example, a locale provider allows you to scope content out and maybe either change the language from inside that scoped content or even just change the language orientation. And and we also have a composable that you can pull into to access all of this in your application. All right, so one of the things that I really wanted to do in version 3 was just kind of expand the ways that you could configure your components. For me, a lot of the thrill is when you do something and it just works. And if it works and that's the best. So in version 3, we expanded from our normal verbose structure where we had, card title, card text, card actions, etc. All these individual kind of internal components where you could define your markup. In version 3, we also added slots. So if you want to kill a piece of content, instead of actually happening to decide where it's going to go inside of it, you can easily access these slots to quickly put information in. We also now have new props. So I think we had a couple of these before, but now it's been fleshed throughout the entire framework where you can supply title, text, header, or anything else that a component may have textually wise or content wise without even having to mess with any markup. And then in the end, you can also mix and match them. So like in the last example, being able to have a defined card text because maybe I need to do something specific inside of it that I can't do with a slot or just the props. But also I'm going to just use the action slot because I don't have anything special that I want to do for that component. So just try to give you more options to kind of get to the same place as before, but all of them are valid and all of them work. So I talked a little bit about this in the beginning. We've taken a lot of props. A good example would be our sizing props. It used to be Boolean for SM, XS, MD, etc. Now it's behind a prop size. As time went on, like I said, we started to get so many props for one particular piece of exclusive feature that it was becoming, the templates were getting very large with configuration options. So we took a lot of those and broke them down into more kind of scoped functionality, or at least with a more defined scope of responsibility. So things like density for changing the vertical height of a component, position for controlling its location. And we've also added a new variance system. So before in version 2, we had a couple variants for, I think it was like text fields and inputs and want, but now for the entire framework, we have support for especially like card components like vcard, vsheet, anything that is like a sheet-like component now has multiple variants that you can choose and change the styling from on the fly. Still kind of focusing on the semantic simplicity. We understand that changing props around is never fun. But whenever we moved to the newest version, we felt that this was probably the best time to do it, if any. And so far, we're really happy with the result. For the designers out there, we've added a couple new tools to your tool belt, or developers who have designers that want tools for the tool belt. We have other UI kits, but we also have an official Vue kit, which is something we're built for specifically for the Vuetify components for version 3. And we're still working on Adobe XD because we're still working on the initial Figma UI kit. But anything, if you go in the Vuetify docs that you see that's visual, maybe it looks like an application or it's an example showing some of the props, everything in the docs is built with this UI kit. So if you check it out, I promise you it's going to be able to help you move forward with your project prototyping. And I use it every day. I love it. And it's free. So you can just go into our documentation and then you can download it, import it into Figma, and check it out. Okay, so now a couple recent updates. So we released October 31st of last year. We've had 3 minor updates since then. The first one was 3.1 Valkyrie. It was released in January. So this is where we introduced Vuetify Labs. This is a new feature for Vuetify that'll allow us to put pre-production components that are maybe not feature parity of version 2, or we would like more feedback on without having to run an actual beta. This is a new channel where users can import those components specifically and test them out. And with that came data table, which is one of the most anticipated features that people are waiting on. It's been in labs since the beginning of this year, and it will be coming out later this year. I'll talk about that in a second. Ported over the virtual scroll component, we have a lot of updates done to that. It works a lot better than in version 2. We're actually in the process today. We're hooking it up with our selects and autocompletes and combo boxes for anybody who had issues with thousands of items inside of your selects and whatnot, and it taking a while to open. That's not going to happen anymore. So next release, Orion. So this was in April, not too long ago. And it was a really large update for expanding the public availability of the different default configuration features for users. So one of the things we did is we added the ability to, you can actually set global class and styles. Now this is more important on the individual component level, but if you're feeling froggy, you can give every single component in the framework a custom class of your choosing. And this is also where we integrated Vuetify Play into the documentation. So now if you go look through any of our examples, we still have a code pen, but there's also a little V logo where it'll actually take the example and put it inside of the Vue REPL structure, and it's all wrapped with Vuetify. It's really, really cool, and it's a lot easier to debug and work with since we were able to take advantage of all the advanced browser features that are available, as opposed to in CodePen where it's really not that good. All right, so version 3.3, this is Icarus. This just came out. This was an intermediate release because of Vue 3 released an update for their DX features. So we had some different things that we had been working on that we wanted to kind of get in. So its release came very quick after the fact. One of the big changes we made was form validation. So in version 2, there were a couple of implicit ways that rules and validation worked that kind of bled into version 3, but we've now broken it up and given you a lot more flexibility to control individually when an input validates and how that validation occurs. For example, let's say that you have a asynchronous action that makes a call to a server. Well, you don't want that to happen as soon as the page loads. And you may not even want to have that when you focus the input. So we've given a lot more options available to where you can specifically say, I want this to validate when an input changes or whenever it's submitted, or I don't want it to validate when the application starts. We've updated, just a small update, but if you've worked with any of our group components, one of the big things people were kind of wanting is selection order. So it already happens like this for our input components, but we have a subset of components called groups, which kind of powers that. And them, at their core, didn't support selection order, so we kind of got that in there. So whenever you make selections, they'll be in proper order now. And we introduced the bottom sheet put into labs. It probably won't be in there for too long, but it's one of the newer components that I forgot to put it on here, but also skeleton loader is one that recently hit the labs channel. All right, so kind of wrapping up here, talk a little bit about, so version 2.7 Nirvana, this is our LTS version. We're shooting for the end of next month. We have about 14 or 15 tasks or different issues that we're going to try to get resolved and put into the framework before this upgrade. When this upgrade happens, this is my wife's laptop. I don't even have a laptop. But when that happens, we'll iterate the version to 2.7, and that will be our 18-month LTS version for critical bugs and security vulnerabilities. We do want to have some backports if it makes sense, but it's really purely upon the availability of people to be able to contribute. Now, one of the things that we didn't do the best job with, and there's reasons for that I won't go into, but our Vuetify 2 to Vuetify 3 upgrade guide. So when LTS release for Havana happens, we are going to have a completely full-featured upgrade guide that will kind of shore in some of the areas that we were inconsistent on. We do have a lot of tooling that automates it for you, but we're going to try to do a much better job of not only getting that into your face, but helping you walk through the process. And like I said, we're looking for end of June release right now. It's now 3.3's out. It's primarily what the team is working on. All right, so 3.4 Blackguard. So this feature or this release is, in a sense, what was part of the 3.3 Icarus. It has a lot of the same components and features and functionality. We're going to have a lot of components coming back to the main framework. vStepper, one-time input, speed dial, and when I say and more, data tables, date picker, there's probably another one in there, but there's a lot coming. And with this release, we're going to be 90%, probably more, but 90% feature parity with Vuetify 2. So that means 90% of all the features and functionality that's available in Vuetify 2 will be officially in Vuetify 3. And we are also making a big update to the documentation. So right now, all of our examples, including the documentation component examples and just inline stuff, is all Options API. So we're adding an option to switch to composition, very similar if you go to the Vue 3 docs, to where you can change all of the inline examples to be composition API. And as well, all of the component examples will now have both. They'll have composition and they'll have option API. You'll have the choice of which one you would like to see. And right now we're shooting for October. So October 31st is our release date last year. So hoping to get the 1 year mark. So look for more information about that coming up soon. And we have a new website. If you want to check it out, Yarn, PNPM, NPM, whatever you want, less than 30 seconds. Try Vuetify.com. You can install and check out the newest version on your computer right now. And so that's all I got to talk about today. Again, my name is John Leader. You can follow me on Twitter and come check us out in our Discord community. Thank you very much.